father went to jail on a plea bargain. Involuntary manslaughter. You see, the murder weapon, the gun used to kill my mother, the one I learned to shoot on, was never found. He never told us what happened, but the plea bargain said that he caused our mother's death by recklessly causing his pistol to discharge directly into her head. He got out of his 1.5 to 5 year sentence in 2 years for good behavior. When he got out, he called me from my Aunt Janet, my mother's sister, my stepmother's house. Ooh, it was rough in there on vacation. Nobody should have to go through that. Dad, it's good to hear your voice. I missed you. I miss you too. How come you never come to see me? You're always my Brenda Adelman. Dad, I told you I need to know what happened the night Mom died. Told you the past is the past. Can't talk about those things. It's not going to bring her back. How's your love life? Len and I broke up. I never really liked Lenny anyway. I bet you look beautiful. I bet you got hundreds of guys chasing you down. You got to come over here to the East Coast. You got family that loves you. By the way there, my lawyer is going to call your lawyer to ask for 1/3 of the money that your mother had. I love her, but by New York law, 1/3 of that money is mine. Who do you think made the money anyway? Looking out my 16th floor window, I fantasized about escaping from the tyranny of my mind and my memories, stepping out into the abyss and joining my mother. To be or not to be, that is the question. Mom, are you here? Can you hear me? Can I forgive Daddy, or should I hold on to this rage for eternity? Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles in my opposing enemy. What will happen to my soul if I take my own life? I don't think I'll be with you again, Mom. In Shakespeare's great tragedy, this is where Hamlet, in his righteous rage, fought till the ending and died. But I don't want to end that way. I must release this rage, robbing me like a thief through depression and apathy. I can't get close to anyone. Wasn't I damaged goods because of my family? How could I ever trust again? I trusted my father, and look what happened. I poured my pain out of my head and heart into the pages of my journal during my sleepless nights, and I wrote 100 poems in 30 days. I wrote my story. I went back to school to get a master's in spiritual psychology, and something happened. Something cracked open. I felt something bigger than me, something good, God, moving through all of this, even my story. And from this place of openness, I realized that nothing my father could have told me would bring my mother back. And she is in my heart. She is in my soul. She lives on through me. I'm not alone. Methinks I see my mother in my mind's eye. I recalled a memory from when I was 5. Good night, sweet princess. I love you to eensy, weensy, teensy, weensy little pieces. Remember this, above all else, to thine own self be true. I surrender to the wisdom my mother passed on to me through my love of Shakespeare, and I got Shakespeare's words, which became my truth. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Something I thought broke me was no longer bad because it truly broke me open. I knew what I needed to do. I had to release my judgments against my parents, so I was no longer bonded to them. Mom, I forgive myself for judging you as a victim, too caught up in your story to be there for me. As I judge you, I become a victim to my own story. I know who you truly are. Good night, sweet princess. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. I was guided to do a ceremony of release with my father. I took his hat, and I felt angels by my side as I walked to the top of a mountain. Dad, I forgive myself for judging you as cold-hearted and abandoning me. If I judge any part of you, I judge a part of myself, and I am no longer willing to do that. Right here, right now, I open my heart again and embrace that beautiful part of you, the essence of who you are that lives in me, as me, every day. I threw his hat over the mountainside, watching as it disappeared from my sight, and with my next breath, a heaviness lifted off of me, and I realized I was no longer my father's great offender or my mother's protector. I was no longer like Hamlet in his righteous unforgiveness and tragic demise. I was just me, Brenda. Yes, Brenda, the red-hot contender, a contender for love and life. Mom, Dad, I love you. I forgive you. And I set myself free.
That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. So, I was just telling Stephen out there, he's like, is this real? I go, yeah.
Yeah, my story.
It's a real story. This is a real story.
It's my story. I don't even know if I said that before.
Well, I remember when the first time you said it in public. You know, that was amazing.
Right,
that
because I was so terrified to tell my story. It was before I did the show, and I was like thinking I was going to get so much judgment, and instead I got just an outpouring of love and people sharing with me their stories.
And we learned, I was trying to remember, what is the thing that we learned that day? Because that was second year, right? That was second year.
No,
was it first year?
I think it was
first year, okay.
How?
So USM, Spiritual Psychology, 2 years, master's course, and so we were doing that together, and what they teach you is judgment. It's like forgive myself for judging. So it's kind of like, for me, one of my things has been my weight. So it's like I would judge myself, you're fat. And so if I judge myself as fat, I go, well, I forgive myself for judging. It's not that I don't do that. It's
because what you have power over is what's in our mind and what's in our thoughts once we get conscious of it.
Exactly. So and then you had said, you forgave yourself for judging yourself. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, that's what it means, Like, for me, it was a little thing,
There was so much self-forgiveness. I mean, that's what it really, so much of it came down to, is forgiving myself for trusting my father. That was a big one. And of course I would trust my father, That's very interesting. So what I wanted to say is that I am so passionate about teaching people how to forgive their past. Like, look at their stories. And so that it's almost like look at your story really deeply so you can extract yourself from it and then tell your story in a way that changes people's lives. And that's what I'm focused on. And I'm also focused on how do you do creatively so that you knock people out so that God knows how many, over a decade, I'll just say that, people are still thinking about it and you don't even know the effects that you've had on people, because I didn't know a lot of that.
Yeah, no, I got stories. I got things that happened to me, friends killed, fights, all kinds of crazy stuff that's happened to me. And some of it, for me, just to talk about it, it's hard for me because I get choked up.
Exactly.
There's a story about my wife and me when I discovered something about the way I was acting. I tell people the story, but I'm almost over emotional telling the story.
Right, and that's a big thing that I teach people, because everything that you're talking about, I've gone through. Too emotional, because what happens is oftentimes we don't speak our story, and then when we realize we can, it's like oversharing, and then you end up draining people. You end up retreating because you think, oh shit, I told too much.
What am I saying? Yeah.
So I teach on that, like how do you craft your story, tell it, and then work on it emotionally at the same time, so that you're sharing the perfect amount, so that you're sharing something really emotional, because we don't want to take the emotions out, but it's like the emotions are serving you instead of them running the show. And then knowing, and then being joyous after. Because when I first started sharing this, I'd feel like shit afterwards, even though people were helped.
Just emotionally draining you?
Right.
Okay.
And instead, now I've learned how to feel amazing, because I'm letting the line of spirit move through me, and to connect with other people, not be over responsible for them. But your stories are important, because if you don't tell them there are people out there that are isolated and don't realize that they're alone. And then once you're able to tell them because you've worked through your emotions.
Yeah.
Then
I wrote a book, here's my book, and I wrote my book, and my book has some nice little stories in it. But the stories with all the guts, the stories with all the emotion, the stories with like, you know.
You gotta go there.
I gotta go to your class.
You do. I'm doing an in-person class actually soon, but in August. But that's a one-person show class. But yes, well, in my virtual
As a
class,
speaker, so I need to probably
my virtual
that.
class
Yeah.
is Your Story Made Simple, which is there's 2 weeks specifically on the healing part of our stories, and I think that's where I differ from what other teachers are teaching.
Yeah.
I've been there. I can hold a space for just about anything. I teach people how to, like, even in a group when they're learning, how do you share appropriately so you're not pulling on people, getting yourself more drained. How do you, so it's really important because those kind of stories are the ones that change the world.
Yeah, and, I think the other thing is too, is we learned at USM is that we go, like when I went to USM, I wanted a master's in spiritual psychology because I wanted to go out and teach people and help people, and who I helped was myself.
I know.
And that's kind of like, that's what happens. Is that what happens with your?
To tell you the truth, yes. Well, writing your story is incredibly healing. What I love about the one-person show format is that, which is different than writing a book, is that you have to inhabit the characters. So I'm inhabiting my dad.
Yeah.
As my dad, I can't play him a villain because people don't play ourselves as a villain.
Sure.
So it was incredibly, extraordinarily healing for me to look at him as him. And then I could play
as his greatness, as in his expression.
As a man with dreams that were thwarted,
Yeah.
as a man who didn't, maybe had mental illness, as a man who, didn't know what to do, not ever condoning.
Sure.
I do talk a lot about forgiveness, but it's never forgetting and it's never condoning. But the forgiveness that I teach and the way I teach it is like finding a compassionate way in, so that what I learned is if I have my heart shut to him, it's shut to me too.
Yeah. That's what my wife Yvette has always said about you, is that, and she uses an example. She uses your example. Like it's been how many years? It's been a long time, like almost 20 years. So,
Wow.
So she uses your 17 years, not that long.
Right?
That's right, 15 years, 10 years. But she
years
uses your example when she talks to other people, and I use the same example. So when you think about Brenda's story, you can forgive, but you don't have to go and hang out with the person.
Right, and
right?
I didn't say it in this because it was just 15 minutes, but I took my dad to court for wrongful death. For wrongful death, so I set a very strong boundary.
I remember that. I think you
Right, I think it was in
school.
2nd year.
Yeah.
And it gave me what happened was I looked into forgiveness, and then when I looked into forgiveness, I'm like, I don't want him in my life. This man's never taken responsibility. There's no remorse, but I want to forgive him so I don't feel that contraction. Yeah. And then I made a powerful self-honoring decision to take him to court.
Good for you. It's an amazing story to tell you. What do you think, Linda?
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
First time I've done it on video.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm really excited
That's
about that.
super
It's always
cool.
live. And then I do teach this. I have a free opt-in that.
Okay, so do you have the opt-in? We put that up on the screen?
Yeah, so
Okay,
it's tell your story, heal yourself, create more wealth, and it's just like the 7 different ways that I've told my story to heal myself first. USM, I wanted to heal. It was the opposite for me. I didn't go to study spiritual psychology to teach. I went to heal myself at a deep level, and then I started teaching.
Well, you're sharper than I. You knew that.
No, I don't know about that. I do actually try to go within and be like, well, what's next? What's my soul calling me to do?
That's another place to go to. University of Santa Monica, spiritual psychology, the most amazing course on the planet, truly.
Amazing.
And I've done
Changed
all.
my life. I kind of feel like my life. I used to say my life was, what happened before my mom was murdered and after. And then when I went to USM, it was like my life before USM and after because of the radical responsibility I learned about, and also how to stop asking why and start being like, well, how can I thrive? Now that this happened, how can I learn? How can I thrive? How can I grow versus how do I just get by?
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Brenda Adelman.
Thank you.
Woo, woo, woo.
That's amazing.
That was behind the scenes. There we go.